Well, the US Homeland Security Secretary says Wednesday's seizure of an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast was part of efforts to stop drug smuggling. The seizure comes as Donald Trump ramps up his attacks on President Nicolas Maduro and builds up the US military presence in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Laureate Corina Machado made her first public appearance in 11 months in Oslo. She praised US efforts to end Maduro's grip on power, saying he's turned Venezuela into a criminal hub.
Some people talk about invasion in Venezuela, the threat of an invasion in Venezuela, and I answered, Venezuela has been already invaded. We have the Russian agents, we have the Iranian agents, we have terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, operating freely in accordance with the regime. We have the Colombian guerrilla, the drug cartels that have taken over 60% of our populations, and not only involved in drug trafficking, but in human trafficking, in networks of prostitution. So this has turned Venezuela into the criminal hub of the Americas.
Now, for more on this, we had the chance to talk to former US Ambassador to Venezuela, James B. Story. I asked him earlier if the pressure from the US is actually changing the situation on the ground.
I think it's certainly starting to change the calculus of both Maduro and those around Maduro about what the future portends. I mean, now that this latest incident with the skipper, this oil tanker that was seized, I think this is going to send a pretty chilling signal to the international companies involved in shipping oil, especially the Ghost fleet, that perhaps Venezuela is a bad bet for business. And to the extent that the Venezuelan regime lives off of gold smuggling, narcotic smuggling, and of course, the black market in oil, it's going to mean it's going to be a little more difficult for Maduro to pay for those people that keep him in power.
Do recent US strikes, James, and the tanker seizure, do they still fall under counter narcotics, or have we gone past this? Have they effectively now become fairly openly a push for regime change?
Well, I've stated from the beginning, this was about regime change. You don't have an aircraft carrier to go after small pangas, small fishing boats loaded with cocaine, for instance, nor do you have F-35s. What this does do is it opens yet another front, an economic front, and it's going to quickly dry up all of the ghost fleet. So these are oil tankers that have been purchased. They spoof their location. Every one of these large ships has to have an AIS tracker on it to let other ships know that they're a navigational hazard. And they'll say they're in one place, but they're really in another. They come into Venezuela, they pick up a load of oil, and then they launder that oil through places such as Malaysia and other places in Southeast Asia to China. They take it up to Cuba. Cuba then sells it or uses it for itself. So it opens up another front, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the Maduro regime. But I want to be really clear here. This was a sanctioned vessel. Now, that's one thing. But according to international law, this was a stateless vessel. They were flying a Guyanese flag, and they're not on the Guyanese registry. That makes it fair game under the conventional law of the sea.
With the US operations escalating, how real is the risk of wider confrontation with Venezuela?
I don't think we're going to have a confrontation with Venezuela. I think there's a possibility of some kind of a kinetic activity that happens within Venezuela. But the vast majority of the Venezuelan people voted Maduro out of office last year. Those are the same people that went out to vote who have family members in the military. They may not be vocal, but they certainly don't stand with Maduro. Maduro is surrounded by his colectivos, is kind of a semi-official motorcycle gang that he uses to terrorize people, and other bad actors working through organizations such as military intelligence, DHACIM is called, or Sabine, the local intelligence service. And these are the people who have kidnapped Americans, tortured Americans, and crucially have done that to their own people. Just this week, one of Maria Corina Machado's operatives, who was a former governor, opposition governor, was murdered while in custody because he has political beliefs that don't align with the Maduro regime. So When you think conflict, Maduro's already in conflict with his own people.
You describe the people and the practices, some of the things that keep him in power, I guess. What would it take to create the perfect conditions that allow Machado or any opposition figure to safely return and potentially drive a democratic transition?
Well, I just want to be very clear that Edmundo Gonzalez won the election last year. It was very clear. And according to law, the law in Venezuela, you have to show the proof called the actas from the voting booths on the exact count. And the regime never showed them, but the Democratic opposition had them, right? But what will it take? It'll take Maduro's departure. I don't think there's any scenario in which Maduro remaining in power in some way or power sharing arrangement would redound in the restoration of democracy. For 25 years, Chavez and then Maduro and Chavismo or Madurismo has completely destroyed the institutions of state in the country and destroyed the democracy in Venezuela. So Maduro has to leave. That's insufficient for fixing the problem, because then you have to reinstitutionalize the country. And that's where the United States, European Union, the neighborhood as well, Brazil, Colombia, others have an important role to play in supporting the Venezuelan people.
Former US Ambassador to Venezuela, James B. Story. We understand that your opinions and your expertise are in high demand today, so we really appreciate your time. Great to see you.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.